The Nerd Academy podcast is released weekly at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, available on our website at www.thenerdacademypodcast.com and wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find the Nerd Academy podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can also help support the show by going to patreon.com/The Nerd Academy podcast, where every donation allows us to bring you more exciting content every week.
Hello there. Welcome back to the Nerd Academy podcast, technically Knights of the Nerd Republic. Just stopping by to do a mini Andor review of these first 3 episodes. Now, assuming things go the way I want them to, which we all know doesn't have a knack for happening exactly the way I want it to, we will be dropping a full episode of Knights of the Nerd Republic this week to discuss these first 3 episodes of Andor. Very excited. Obviously, a lot of our friends, Alex and Molly Damon, Alden Diaz, got to go to the premiere, and I'm looking forward to talking with some of those very people as this season continues. But the first 3 episodes are out today on Disney Plus, and I just finished watching them. I want to start with a complaint I have about media in general. Specifically media conversations that have been had in the zeitgeist a lot in the last almost 10 years, talking about dark and gritty, talking about realism. A lot of people talk about Rogue One being the dark and gritty, real Star Wars. And a lot of people who have gotten press screeners, people who got the privilege to attend the premiere, people who have been discussing Andor online preemptively have been throwing the dark and gritty verbiage around, and I hate it. And having seen these first 3 episodes, I hate that description even more. Rogue One and Andor both are stories about finding hope in darkness. And I think that there is something very special about Rogue One being the story of the everyman living through the age of the Empire. Stories like that of what we get in the original trilogy, and even stories that are still about people who aren't Luke, Han, and Leia, your Fallen Orders with Cal Kestis, etc., are still centered on beings and people who have no ability to not feel hope, if that makes sense. Cal can trust in the Force. Luke can trust in the Force, can trust in his mission and his legacy to follow in his father's footsteps. A character like Jyn Erso, or in the case of Andor, Cassian Andor, they don't have that luxury. They have the harsh reality of living in an indifferent universe, in an indifferent galaxy that has been run by cruel people. And for someone like Cassian, who we don't know a whole lot yet, and spoilers, by the way. So if the non-spoiler version, I love it, and if you've not watched it yet, go watch it. But spoilers. Cassian being victimized by the Republic, his people being attacked and colonized, as we know is going to happen, which is the verbiage that they used in the press leading up to this. He by default has very little faith in establishments in the Republic, and has seen the Republic only go crueler as it's become the Empire. Jin's entire family life is ripped to shreds by the Empire. Both of these people have very little reason to be hopeful in the macro. These are stories about them finding something worth fighting for and seeing that they can fight this fight. I think that's very important. And I think that the people who latch on to dark and gritty, mythologize the concept of darkness and grittiness as meaning in a world devoid of hope, might make right. And I hate that. I hate that. I think one thinks of the Dark Knight trilogy, which viewers of this channel know I have a lot of mixed opinions about. One of the reasons why, one of the saving graces of the Dark Knight trilogy, I should say, is the fact that at the end of the day, there is a message of hope. It is not as hopeful as, say, the Batman is, but at the end of the day with the Dark Knight, there is still a thesis statement of a royal we, humanity, can do better. So we must do better. I wish more stories that fell into that dark and gritty place actually lived up to that. I wish stories that were so dark and gritty made the decision to be actively hopeful and for us to be headed towards a place of active hope. It seems Andor is doing that. And in these first 3 episodes, it is very much a place of dread and darkness. And we, as the audience, know where the story's headed. We know that by the time we get to Rogue One, Cassian Andor is devoted to the cause. Now, I think it's interesting that there is a part of that darkness and edge to him still. I think it's very fascinating that he is still, like the very beginning of this show, he's trying to find his sister. And in this first episode, he goes into a space brothel, #space brothel, to try to hunt down his sister. And these 2 corporate stooges, corpos, that serve the Empire, accost him at the bar at the brothel, and then they accost him outside of the brothel, and they jump him. And Cassian defends himself. He accidentally kills one of them in the scuffle. I can't quite tell if the guy is killed by the ricocheting blaster bolt that gets let off, or if Cassian just headbutts the guy hard enough that he kills him. And then the corpo who's left alive is begging for his life so that they can try to figure something out. And Cassian wastes the guy. And he blows him away, not unlike the guy he kills in Rogue One with the broken arm. He shoots him because he's a liability. And I think it's interesting that even though this story is inherently moving towards hope, there's still that darkness in Cassian that will linger. I think it's a very interesting decision made by Tony Gilroy. With that said, I love Cassian's characterization so far. I'm not going to really be going episode by episode, or maybe I will by the end of this review. Who knows? I will say the pacing, it's very much a slow burn. A lot of people have been saying that. It's kind of been true of almost every Disney Plus show, is it kind of takes a minute to really get the ball rolling. To compare Andor to some of its predecessors, it is moving with a lot more initiative than, say, a Book of Boba Fett. And I'm not like begging it to speed up in its storytelling, but I also it's not a criticism of Andor that I like wanted, that I'm like wanting it to take its time like Kenobi did, because I just want to live in that world for its own reasons, because these stories are all very different, and that's the beauty of this era of Star Wars. But yeah, we also finally get a lot of that scum and villainy, that underworld stuff that I think we've all really been wanting. I mean, I know the fandom as a whole has really been begging for it. I can go either way. Y'all know I want my Jedi stuff at all times, but we really get the dawn of like a true like bit of scum and villainy stuff going on here, because the Mandalorian has like one foot in it for like the first 3 episodes, and I think we're done with scum and villainy stuff. I think from this point on, it's going to be espionage, it's going to be a political thriller, it's going to be all those things. That's great. But like The Mandalorian, where we only really spend 3 episodes doing like a bounty hunter thing, and Book of Boba Fett, which, you know, is what it is. A lot of people thought it was going to be The Godfather, but in Star Wars, and it wasn't necessarily that. That doesn't mean it was bad. I quite like Book of Boba Fett. I have complaints, but you know, it is what it is. This, however, does stick more to that scum and villainy tone in the first 3 episodes. Um, you know, and again, it's the little guy stuff. You know, like Cassian, not unlike a Han Solo, owes literally almost every named character in this show money. Safe from Luthen and the Corpo Stooges. Cassian owes everybody a couple bucks. Cassian is clearly a bit of a dirtbag, and I like that. I think it adds to his mythos, his legend. Now, is it slightly derivative of Han? Maybe we'll see. We'll see how they differentiate each other. But so far, the scumbag in debt who becomes a rebel hero, a little old hat, but we'll see where it goes. Bix, so charismatic, immediately in love with her, very much enjoy her. Tim got what he fucking deserved. Stitches get stitches. The Linus Most, I like him more than the main Corpo. I need to Google the characters' names again. It's only been a couple episodes in one sitting. I'm not quite used to everybody yet. Apologies. You gotta love Google Casts because they're not accurate at all. Because K2SO is not in this show, but yeah, I can't find his name. Anyway, the main corpo, who I think it's interesting because in the first episode, you see like the corruption of this like corporate police that serve the Empire because police defend the means of production. But you see this first guy, he gets kind of blown off by his chief. He's like, listen, don't worry too much about our own guys who got killed. They probably got themselves killed. And to a certain degree, the chief is correct, but he's also derelict in his duties to not want to like investigate this actual crime that took place. Because there's a really interesting paradox there, you know, or like an internal contradiction. I know paradox is a little dramatic phrasing. But there's a funny contradiction there. He doesn't want to investigate it because he's like, well, these guys brought it on themselves, which is true. These guys did go pick a fight and they did attack Cassian, and Cassian accidentally killed the one guy out of self-defense, and he did execute the other guy, which, you know, not good, but you know. But he also clearly doesn't want to get engaged in it because it will draw eyes and negative attention to his operation. Because they were at a brothel they weren't supposed to be at, drinking liquor they weren't supposed to have, messing with a guy they shouldn't have been messing with. So on one level, he is not incorrect for being apprehensive about trying to handle this issue, but he's also doing it for the wrong reasons. He's not going, our own guys messed up and taking responsibility for that. He's doing the opposite, which shows his corruption. And it is very fascinatingly juxtaposed with the main corpo, who, again, his name escapes me, unfortunately. My apologies. Who is very dedicated to doing the quote-unquote right thing, doing the thing by the book, wanting to make his dedication to the cause omnipresent. And then he gets paired up with Linus, who's an even more intense version of himself. And I think that the desire to be this, you know, all-encompassing power in the galaxy, you know, it's emblematic of the way that the power of the Empire goes to the heads of these people. So yeah, and again, I kind of jumping around a little bit here and there. In terms of story, I also do want to say, again, to get into like a fandom culture debate, I understand that people love the use of practical sets, and they look incredible here. and I am not going to deride the use of the practical sets. This staging looks incredible. I also think the volume looks fucking fine. So please let that go. Oh, yes, the music. That was another thing I wanted to touch on. And again, like quickie review. Which quickie to me means like probably like being like 15, 20 minutes long. I love the music. Love the score so much. And for those of you, again, frequent watchers know, big Childish Gambino fan. The theme that plays while Cassian is pondering the star path. He's alone in his little like ship bunker. He's looking at it, and then it's also in the credits. Sounds so much more like an orchestral version, or something, not so much more, but just sounds so much like a orchestral version of Childish Gambino's Flight of the Navigator. That just made me happy. I loved the third episode. I love the building of the tension throughout all three episodes, but the third episode, the tension that is set up at the outset with the banging on everything. It's such a good, slow build in this and showing this community that is truly teaming up. The way that a community can fight back against authoritarianism, it can fight back against forces of space fascism, whatever you want to call it. That slow build up, seeing Luthen and Cassian's combined wit in the way that they escaped is very interesting. I'm curious as to why Luthen and Cassian spared that corpo. If there's one, and again, I don't like to be the guy who's like, why didn't they just kill him? And kind of bring everything back down into that very aggressive, dude broy kind of interpretation of things. But after Cassian kind of killed that one guy in cold blood, I was very interested as to why they let this corpo live. Unless Luthen and Cassian realized it would put more heat on them, and Luthen going like, I'll kill him, was just to frighten the guy, then that would make sense. And I'm assuming that's what's at play, but I wanted to bring that up. But the firefight that happens in that shed where all the chains and things are coming apart, obviously that was part of the clip that was shown in the IMAX re-release of Rogue One, which looked and sounded incredible in an IMAX theater. And I think getting my first glimpse of this show in an IMAX theater is going to be a high a lot of people are going to be chasing for a long time, especially too, again, some of our friends who saw this at the premiere, like, some of y'all are going to be chasing the high of seeing this in a movie theater. And I think that's where I'm going to be at too for a little bit. But yeah, I think that the concept, like, it's almost like, almost in some ways, and this is going to be a wild comparison, it feels like the Clone Wars movie. It feels like you could have cut some of these first three episodes together into like a short film. Not even a short film. It could have been feature length. I feel like there's, and I hate the whole, oh, it's a 6-hour movie. I hate that shit. But there is a cinematic, like cinema feel to these first three episodes, especially the final episode of this bunch that we got in this premiere. That said, I am very intrigued as to where this is going. I am very excited to observe the tone. Because again, I want to see just how hopeful the show lets us get. I have feelings, and a lot of mixed feelings, a lot of feelings I haven't quite figured out yet about stories like Rogue One that are so dark and so, on one hand, devoid of hope, and on the other, incredibly optimistic. And I think time will tell. Time will tell with this story. I also want to call attention to the flashback sequences to Cassian's youth. Another thing I had in my notes here. I think is a very brave choice to keep the Canary flashbacks in their native language and not give us the basic in the subtitles that they're speaking. That choice, I think, becomes way more immersive in many ways. And the actors and performers who are in that scene really get to just work. Like whenever they first started speaking, I watched things with subtitles on. I looked down immediately to try to see, if there was a translation. It wasn't there, and I found myself way more like drawn in. Like it's a choice that forces the viewer to really pay attention in that moment, to 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 understand the context and understand just like the feelings that are at play there without being able to know exactly what they're saying. Um, Also, to throw back, I believe there is mention somewhere that Cassian's parents were part of the Separatist Alliance, which makes their lack of love for the Galactic Republic during that flashback very clear. And I think that will also be an interesting throwback to see. Obviously, we know from the trailer there's the sequence. We do see some Phase 2 clone troopers. So we'll probably see the end of the Clone War in some way. Doubt we'll be seeing any Order 66 at any point. But um, yeah, no, I absolutely love these first 3 episodes. Very, very interested into where they will be headed. Um, yeah, I think that's all I got. Be sure to tune in at some point this week. We will be dropping a full Cassian Andor first 3 episodes review in a Knights of the Nerd Republic podcast episode. So stay tuned for that. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the things, and may the force be with you always.
Stop! Move away from the cookie jar!